Hey everyone. Welcome back to HOA Karen Stories. How's it going today? I hope you're all doing well. Now, I've got an absolute wild one for you today. Imagine this, an HOA president with a taste for luxury, trying to exploit your personal property for her own benefit. That's exactly what happened when Karen, the HOA president from next door, tried to use my electric car charging station for her own selfish reasons, all while trying to get me to foot the bill. But let me tell you, I wasn't about to let that slide. Stick around to hear how things escalated and how Karen learned the hard way that messing with the wrong person can have serious consequences. Before we dive in, don't forget to take a second to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and motivates me to keep bringing you these crazy stories. Now, let's get into it. It was a quiet afternoon when Karen, the HOA president from the shiny new Golden Heights estates, decided to pay me a visit. My house, nestled on the edge of the city, had been in my family for generations, surrounded by mango trees and chickens clucking in the yard. It was my sanctuary. I was out front trimming the branches of my mango tree when the sleek black SUV rolled up onto my driveway. Out stepped Karen, dressed in high-end fashion, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Her designer handbag swung loosely at her side, the type of bag that probably cost more than my car. She flashed a wide, artificial smile as she approached me. "Hello, neighbor," she chirped, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA over at Golden Heights Estates. We're currently updating our community guidelines, and I wanted to discuss something with you." I wiped the sweat from my brow, not sure where this was heading. "Okay. What's up?" Her smile widened. "Well, you see, we've noticed that you have this lovely electric charging station here," she said, gesturing toward the charging point by my car. "Our community is looking to install one for everyone, and we were hoping we could temporarily use yours. We'll even compensate you for the electricity." Of course, something in her tone made me pause. I took a deep breath. "I'm not sure about that. It's my personal station, and I need it for my own use." She tilted her head, narrowing her eyes. "Oh, come on now. Don't be difficult. We're just asking for a little cooperation. For the good of the community," she insisted, clearly expecting me to fold. "It's not like you'll be using it all the time." I could see through her act. Her smile had turned a little too sharp. "I'm afraid the answer is no," I said firmly, hoping she'd take the hint. But Karen wasn't one to give up easily. "We'll see about that," she said with a sneer, turning back toward her SUV. "Don't worry. We'll be back." After Karen left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Her sweet, well-rehearsed words had left a sour taste in my mouth. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like she wasn't being entirely upfront. A few days later, I got my answer. It all started when she called me again, this time under the pretense of clarifying the offer. I answered the phone, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hello. Hey. It's Karen again," she chirped, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I was thinking it over, and maybe we could work out some terms. You know? Like a monthly fee to cover your electricity costs. I raised an eyebrow. That sounded reasonable, until the next part. "And of course," she continued, "it would only be a temporary arrangement. But if the HOA sees how beneficial it is, We could possibly make it a long-term thing. For the community's benefit. Of course. But for now, let's keep it just between you and me. My gut clenched. Just between us. You mean exclusively for you? I asked. Unable to hide my suspicion. There was a brief silence on the other end. As if Karen was caught off guard. Then she quickly recovered. Her voice dripping with sugary sweetness. Oh. Of course. But you know. It's for the HOA's best interests. Right? A little perk for the community. And who's going to mind a bit of extra luxury? Besides, you'll be helping out your neighbors. I could feel the manipulation in her words. The subtle implication that I'd be doing a great service to her, and to her alone. She wanted me to foot the bill for a charging station that would essentially be used only for her high-end electric car. It wasn't about the HOA or helping the community, it was about Karen getting what she wanted without paying for it. I kept my cool. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, I said. Trying to keep my voice steady. This is a personal station. And I need it for myself. Karen's voice faltered for a moment. Then hardened. Don't be so difficult, she snapped. We're offering you a deal here. You can't possibly be so selfish as to turn this down. I hung up. The phone call leaving me with a strong sense of unease. It was clear to me now, Karen wasn't asking for a community service. She was trying to use my resources for her personal gain, and she was trying to make me feel guilty for not agreeing. That was the final straw. I wasn't going to let her exploit me like that. Time to set things straight. A week passed. And I thought Karen had backed off. But she wasn't the type to let things go so easily. One Saturday afternoon. As I was fixing a broken fence post by the side of the house, I heard the screech of tires and looked up to see Karen's familiar black SUV pulling into my driveway. This time? She wasn't alone. She had a couple of her HOA board members in tow. And all of them wore expressions that screamed entitlement. I didn't need to guess what this was about. Karen strutted up to me. Her heels clicking sharply on the gravel. And I could already hear the frustration in her voice. We need to talk, she said curtly. This situation is getting out of hand. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up, crossing my arms. I already told you. Karen? The answer is still no. I'm not lending you or the HOA my charging station. It's my personal property. Karen scoffed. You really don't get it. Do you? She said. Her voice dripping with condescension. This isn't just about you. This is about the entire community. We're a prestigious development. And your refusal is embarrassing. It's selfish. Her eyes flicked over to the neighbors who had gathered in front of their houses. Clearly drawn by the commotion. She turned on them with a smile that looked more like a warning. Don't you all agree? She asked. Her tone turning sugary sweet. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if this guy helped us out? After all, we're trying to make this community as great as possible. I could feel the pressure mounting. But I wasn't about to back down. I'm not your charity project. Karen? This is my property. And I don't owe you or anyone else anything. Karen's smile faltered for a split second before turning into a glare. You're being difficult, she hissed. Her voice low but cold. This is why we can't have nice things in this neighborhood. Because people like you refuse to be part of the solution. I kept my voice steady. I'm not refusing to be part of anything. I just don't appreciate being taken advantage of. You're asking me to pay for your community's electricity so you can run your show while you get to enjoy the benefits. That's not a solution, that's exploitation, Her face turned bright red. And I could see her blood pressure rising. The neighbors were starting to murmur. And I caught a couple of them glancing at me, nodding in agreement. Karen's act wasn't working. Well? That's it then, she snapped. Her voice sharp with venom. You're going to regret this. She turned sharply on her heels. Her heels digging into the gravel with each angry step. I'll make sure the HOA takes action. She muttered under her breath. Just loud enough for everyone to hear. As Karen stormed back to her SUV. I could feel my heart pounding. I'd seen the arrogance in her eyes. But now it was mixed with pure rage. She wasn't used to being denied. And I knew that she would take this to the next level. I could feel the anger building up inside me as I watched Karen speed off. Her SUV kicking up a cloud of dust. Enough was enough. I was done being polite and letting her take advantage of me. I knew that if I didn't act now, Karen would just keep pushing. The first thing I did was gather every piece of evidence I could find. I combed through my phone messages and emails, looking for the moments where Karen had tried to manipulate me into handing over my charging station. There it was, her repeated attempts to guilt-trip me, phrasing it as a favor for the community, when in reality, she was using the HOA as a cover for her personal benefit. I couldn't believe how blatant she had been. Then, as luck would have it, a neighbor mentioned that they had noticed Karen's car parked outside my house late at night on several occasions, plugged into my charging station. My suspicion was confirmed. Karen had been secretly using my electricity without my permission. And I had proof. I immediately contacted a lawyer, someone I knew would fight back just as hard as I was willing to. Anna. A tough, no-nonsense lawyer who had handled more than a few tough cases, was the perfect person for the job. She agreed to take on the case. And within days, she drafted a cease and desist letter. The letter was clear and to the point. Karen had to stop using my electricity. And she had to reimburse me for the power she'd stolen. But I wasn't stopping there. I had learned my lesson from the first confrontation with Karen. She couldn't be trusted to back off without some consequences. I knew I had to safeguard my property. So, I contacted a security company and had them install extra cameras, covering every angle around the charging station. These cameras weren't just for show, they had night vision and audio, ensuring that I had irrefutable proof of anything that went down. A few days later, just as I was finishing up the installation, I saw Karen's SUV roll up again. She had no idea what was coming. This time, I had the upper hand. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the security footage from the night before, and sat back in my chair, waiting for the showdown. It didn't take long for Karen to show up again. Her SUV appeared in my driveway one late afternoon, the engine purring loudly as if it had a right to be there. I was waiting for this moment, knowing she would come back, more demanding than ever. She marched up to my front door with that same entitled look in her eyes. "I'm here to finalize the details on the charging station," Karen declared confidently, her tone suggesting that she expected me to welcome her with open arms. "I've talked to the HOA, and they agree it's a necessary resource for our community." I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the cease and desist letter, placing it firmly in front of her. The paper was crisp, its words sharp and clear. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice steady, "this is the letter from my lawyer. You're no longer allowed to use my electricity. And if you attempt to do so again, I'll pursue legal action." She took the letter, her face turning a deep shade of red. For a moment, she just stared at it, as if she couldn't quite process what was happening. "What's this?" she hissed, her fingers trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages. "It's a formal notice to stop using my charging station," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "I suggest you take it seriously." Karen's jaw clenched. "This is absurd. You can't just throw away a community project like this." The HOA agreed it would benefit everyone. "You're being unreasonable." Her voice rose with each word. But I wasn't moved. "This isn't about the community, Karen. This is about you trying to use my property for your own gain. And that's not going to happen," I replied. For a moment, there was silence between us, just the sound of her breath growing more shallow and frustrated. She opened her mouth to argue again, but I interrupted her. "By the way," I added casually, "I've already reported this whole scheme to the HOA board, along with all the evidence I've gathered. You know? The power theft, your attempts to manipulate me, everything. They're already investigating." The shock on Karen's face was almost satisfying. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted in disbelief. She stammered, trying to regain control. You're lying. The HOA would never." "Oh. They did," I interrupted, my voice sharp now. "And they'll be making some changes." "I wouldn't be too comfortable in your position," she sputtered, trying to come up with something to salvage her dignity. But I could see the realization setting in. The look in her eyes was one of panic as she frantically searched for a way out of this mess. "You can't do this," she screamed. But it was too late. The HOA board quickly took action. Less than a week later, I got the official notification that Karen had been removed from her position as HOA president. Effective immediately. Her reputation, once a beacon of supposed authority, had crumbled. The community turned its back on her. No one was buying her manipulative tactics anymore. As for Karen, the consequences she faced were harsh. She'd thought she could walk all over me. But she had learned the hard way that messing with the wrong person can lead to unexpected consequences. And as the HOA board set about cleaning up the mess she'd created, I couldn't help but feel a small wave of satisfaction. For the first time in a long while, my property, and my peace of mind, were mine again.